The question is, how do I wean a toddler from a dummy? How do I wean a dummy from a toddler? So first of all, the right age to wean a dummy from a toddler is really totally up to you. But it does often become quite easy as soon as they've got good language. So at about 3 years old, I like to say we can have the dummies gone by. But there's kind of a precursor to that, and that is at 18 months. And that is where you start to limit dummy use only to the cot. So if you haven't done that already, I want you to start to limit the dummy use only to the cot when your baby actually goes down for a sleep. And you can start to that from 18 months onwards. Literally, that's the only time at which they can actually have the dummy. And the reason for that is it starts to break that dependence on it. And it also means that their language will then be encouraged because they will have nothing in their mouth. They'll be able to talk. So dummies only for cot time. And then at about 3 years old, you can just tell them a story. And the story I told my little boy was that, we'd been in the bush and he'd been hearing hyenas. And I said, oh, those hyena babies are crying. We need to give all your dummies to the hyenas. And we literally packaged all the dummies up, took them to the post office, and voila, there was a soft toy from Mummy Hyena that she had sent back for my child that then replaced those dummies. And what's great about that is that self-soothing, or that soothing that was that he needed the dummy for, was then replaced with a little hyena, and that became known as my hyena. And my hyena lived in our home for a very long time and was deeply loved. So that's a very cool way to get rid of dummies for your little one. Hi, Black Mom Chronicles, South Africa. If you guys don't follow her, please give her a follow. It's a great account. She says hi. Then Elizabeth, baby not able to stick to nap schedules, stroke nap during the day. My 11-week-old just naps on me and in the pram or the carrier. So Elizabeth, that is a super common problem. If it is really a problem, but let's talk about it. We call it contact napping, where they'll only literally sleep when they're on us or moving. So a couple of things. First of all, you're going to watch those awake times. So go and get the Parent Sense app and watch the awake times, those spaces between sleeps. Because if you overshoot those and your baby is overstimulated, awake for too long, they are more likely to not settle at sleep time. And if they don't settle at sleep time, then we start to become dependent on rocking, feeding, carrying, pram to sleep. So number one rule is, first of all, have a look at those awake times. And for your 11-week-old, that is really, really short awake time. So literally an hour to an hour and a half is what you will be looking at. It's written on the homepage of the app. So go and have a look at the Parent Sense app and you'll know exactly how long between sleeps. Then another thing with an 11-week-old is I would actually still be swaddling. So I would swaddle your little one up and I would take her when she's drowsy but still awake, is take her to her cot, give her a little bit of rocking so she's drowsy, put her down and leave your hands on her. So that's still touch. So we've got swaddling and still touch. And that obviously kind of gives her almost like the comfort of being up against you, almost exactly the same, except she's lying horizontally. And then don't leave her for 15 minutes until she's into the deeper sleep cycle. You can also get one of those little rockers. They kind of rock the cot or rock the pram, and they're fabulous because it kind of feels like that little bit of motion or vibration that your baby gets when they're up against you. So all of those are good strategies. And I would say between 11 and 14 weeks, you do want your baby to start to fall asleep lying down as opposed to always being in your arms, because that can obviously lead to habits longer term. Right, great question, Kaylee. How and when to move to a big bed? Okay, so preferably not before 24 months. So there's a good reason for that. Toddlers need boundaries. There's two types of boundaries that you can have. The one is boundaries in the mind. So like a construct in my head that, don't put your finger in the plug hole, that I need to think about that there's a boundary there, a verbal boundary. And the other one is a physical boundary, like there's a plug stopper inside the stop of the hole, so they can't stick their fingers into the plug hole. That's physical. Same for sleep. So sleep, your one boundary is physical, which is the cot bumpers or the cot bars, and the other one is the verbal, which is in my head. Don't get out of bed and come down the passage. So up until 24 months, just go with the physical because it's a whole lot easier. Your toddler is not really fully understanding everything about the narrative around boundaries. So I always say 24 months. One exception, and that is if your toddler is starting to climb over the edge of the cot railings and actually is going to land on the floor and harm themselves. So that's the only circumstance in which you do it earlier. So the answer to your question, Kaylee, is 24 months. All right. Tamsin, morning, Meg. My baby's 13 weeks old. She took the bottle well, but now she refuses the bottle. Okay, so Tamsin, a couple of things. If you are not going to go back to work, then you could just continue breastfeeding. What some moms do is they just skip out that bottle stage altogether. So they literally go from breastfeeding and then onto solids with breastfeeding. And then by the time your little one gets to 8 months old, they're only having 3 breastfeeds a day, which is morning, evening, and 1 in the middle of the day. And so then it whittles down. By the time they're at a year, it's only 2 morning and evening. So you can just go and skip the bottle stage altogether. However, if you are going back to work, there are a couple of things. First of all, you need to keep offering that bottle. And if she's battling it at the moment, I would actually do it daily until she's back onto it. If your baby's taking it quite seamlessly and you just want to keep it there as a backstop, like for when you go back to work or if you're out for dinner one evening, then what you want to do is you just want to do it once a week. So once a week's fine if they're taking it quite seamlessly. If they're not, like Tamsin, like your little one is, then obviously you're going to want to do it every single day. Just one of the feeds, you want to make sure that they are taking the bottle if you're going back to work, as an example. Other strategies to help your little one take the bottle. Number 1, fill it with what is familiar. So that would be express breast milk. So use express breast milk rather than formula. So at least one thing stays the same. And then you're going to mess around with a whole lot of different teats. And there are lots of different teats. The ones that babies tend to, you sometimes get these little shaped teats that kind of fill the sides of their mouth. They seem to work really well, rather than the very narrow teats. And yeah, I mean, you really just need to mess around with that as well. Then, obviously, another strategy is to have dad or granny or nanny or somebody else actually do the feed. So you literally leave your little one with them to take that feed. Right, lots of questions coming through, so I'm going to keep on moving through them. So how do you get a 4-month-old to go from 5 short naps to 3 longer ones? Oh, what a great question, Sonika. So one of the things there, and this is what a lot of people will actually be, this will ring bells with a lot of people, is that around about 4 months, your little one is doing kind of 45-minute sleeps. And so they're never actually getting these 1.5 stretches. And if they had a 1.5 stretch, then it would immediately mean that they are dropping at least 1 or maybe 2 sleeps. But between 4 and 6 months, it often is quite difficult to get them to actually lengthen those sleeps. So you can try by going in and putting your hands on them and kind of try and just soothe them into the next sleep cycle. But it usually won't work. But at 6 months old, they start to do it naturally. And that usually is for that sleep that's over midday. So what you do there is you'll give them lunch at like say 11:30. You'll then give them a really nice bottle feed. Even if it's not quite time for a bottle feed, you can try that at 6 months after lunch. So it's not going to wreck their appetite or anything. And then it gives them a little bit of milk that they're going to then drink, and then they settle down. And then very often at 6 months, they then start to link those 2 sleep cycles. What we would usually expect at about 6 months is then for them to have those 3 longer sleeps that you're talking about. All right. My 17-month-old moved from depending on the boob at night for comfort to the bottle. And she's now waking up 3 to 5 times at night for the bottle. I need her to learn to self-soothe, but I'm not sure where to start. Okay, so first of all, this is a good transition. So to go from, the breast is our most difficult habit to break because it comes with liquid, it comes with warmth, it comes with love, it comes with nourishment, it comes with contact against you. So there's a lot of reasons why it's hard. So transitioning from that onto a bottle is absolutely fine. Now that she's in a bottle, it's a whole lot easier. So first thing is, I would definitely say at 17 months, moms, absolutely no milk at night. And the reason for that is it will wreck their day appetite. It can cause obesity. It can be linked with ear infections. There's just a lot of reasons why we really don't want little ones to have bottles at night at 17 months. So first of all, anything before 12 o'clock, I would just call it an absolute no. You can start to rationalize with her. So A, B, C. A is acknowledge. I know you want the bottle. B is the boundary. You can't have the bottle because the kitchen's closed. I always used to use that one. Sorry, the kitchen's closed. And C is the choice. So you can have a bottle of water or you can have nothing. And they'll usually end up saying, okay, they'll take the bottle of water. So certainly before 12 o'clock, for your first feed, you are definitely going to do that. That there's no bottle. She wants anything, she gets milk, it gets water. And you need to actually be quite firm with that. Then the next feed will probably then be like between 1 and 2. And for a couple of days, you can offer that feed. And then you'll probably see that the third one is at about 4 or 5 in the morning. So you're actually down to only 1 night feed. And as soon as you're down to 1 night feed, then you're going to move that one out and do exactly the same as you did with the one before 12 o'clock, which is say, sorry, the kitchen's closed, and then only offer her water. Hope that helps. All right, so let's keep going. Right, Annika. So she says, hi Meg, 8-month-old boy, sleeps and eats well, good boy, but still wakes between 1 and 3 for a feed, bedtime 6:30. Is it normal to still offer milk at this time, or should I stop offering milk? So gold standard probably is normal milk because they don't need it after 6 months. However, if your little one is sleeping well, eating well, wakes up once between 1 and 3, has a quick feed, a quick little bit of milk, and goes back to sleep till 6 o'clock in the morning, I would probably just do it. I would probably just not worry about it, because I'm a little bit around like path of least resistance. So I'd probably go with that. However, if you're really wanting to get rid of that 1 to 3 a.m. milk feed, then you actually can, because he doesn't need it. So that is a fact. He doesn't actually need it. And then what I would do is I would either dilute the milk down at that time, or so like just put 1 scoop of milk and, every day just make it a little bit more like water. And eventually he's just having water, but he will move that out to the morning. Right, let's see, another question. This is a great question. So another one from Annika. She says, what are your views on dream feeds? Are you for or against them? So I'm not massively for or against anything in early parenting, because I do think that everybody's journey is different. However, I do think that dream feeds are not fabulous for long-term habits, because what usually happens is that your baby has a dream feed. And so for those of you who don't know what a dream feed is, it basically is that your baby, let's say they went down at 7, at 10 o'clock, they're still asleep, but you go into the room, you basically stick a bottle in their mouth, they drink it while they're asleep, and then they'll stretch a little bit longer because it'll take care of the hunger. And so they might only wake for their next feed at 1. So instead of waking at let's say 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock, you're now waking, when you go to bed, you're feeding your baby, and then at 1 o'clock, they're waking up. The problem is that they can become dependent and have an expectation around that. So I like to allow sleep habits to develop naturally. That means that, for little ones, they would, kind of naturally stretch out their sleeps from waking at 10 to 11 to 12 to 1. And babies actually will do that. They really will do that. But if you're doing a dream feed, you don't know when they're going to do that, number 1. And number 2, you kind of almost train them not to. So for those reasons, I am against it. My gut is go to bed earlier for you, be in bed by 9. So that if they wake up at 11 or 12, then you're up for them and you can rather do this feed then. All right. Pelos, she says, my daughter is 9 months old, hasn't started crawling. Hasn't started crawling yet, despite the help we're giving her. She also refuses to eat anything. She'll take a meal once a day, but will refuse anything afterwards. Okay, so 2 very separate issues. So 9-month-old not crawling, I'm not massively worried. We kind of want them crawling by 10 months. If you've got the Parent Sense app, we've got all of those activities in there for crawling. So go and try and have a look at that. Just give her lots of opportunities on the floor. Please do not use a bumbo seat, and do not leave her in a pram or in a seated carrier or in a swing at all during the day. So she needs to be, the minute you are stopped and you're no longer traveling in the car or out on the street with her in a carrier or a pram, she needs to be out on the floor. And the reason for that is that floor time is what will then get her into wanting to move for crawling. Put things just out of her way so that she just wants to start to reach for it. And then in terms of the only eating a meal once a day at 9 months, that's a real problem. And I can tell you that there's only one thing that could be causing that, and that's too much milk. So at 9 months, she only needs 3 milk feeds in 24 hours. Okay, so that's it. So you've got to pull back on the milk. And the minute you pull back on the milk, she'll go into feeding better. But if you don't have the Parent Sense app, you must go and get it, because it'll guide you as to exactly which times to do that. Okay, let's see. Look at that. We managed to get to the end of our questions, which is really cool. So anybody else who's got questions, you're welcome to ask them. I see I've got a few requests to join. I'm not going to have people join, but you definitely can ask your questions here. So other questions just around babies waking up in the middle of the night and being awake for ages. I've had a few questions in the last week on that. So people whose little ones kind of wake up at 12 and then they're kind of awake all the way through until 2 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes they're quite happy being awake at that time. So there's just a couple of things there. The one is you're going to want to have your little one going to sleep at good times, and especially during the day, because if they have a lot of sleep during the day, like very long periods of sleep and too many sleeps, then they often will have these very wakeful times in the middle of the night. So this particularly is so for toddlers. So this is for little ones who are kind of 2 or 3 years old. They're having an hour and a half to 2 hours over midday, and now they're awake in the middle of the night for like a 2-hour stretch. And that can be because they actually just are having too much sleep during the day. So they almost steal the night sleep to add into the day sleep. So you need to watch those day sleep times and how long your little ones are asleep in the day. So the other reason why little ones will wake up in the middle of the night and be awake for long stretches of time in the toddler years is because they need to be dewormed. And so deworming is something that I do recommend for babies after they are 18 months to 2 years old. And that can stop those nighttime, kind of long periods of awake time. Okay, hey Meg, I've got a 9-week-old and we're trying to move away from literally waking her every 4 hours for feed and letting her lead us when she's hungry. How do we navigate transitioning from clock feeding? Okay, so this is a great question, because if you've got a 9-week-old, then during the day, she must feed every 4 hours. So I would still be waking her. So if she is really sleepy during the day, then I would say by 3.5 hours, longest, I would wake her so that she is feeding by 4 hours, because we need those days to have lots and lots of feeds in them and regular feeds, because otherwise your baby will have day-night sleep reversal. In terms of nighttime, which is what you might be talking about, so you say move away from literally waking her every 4 hours to feed and let her wake us when she's hungry, you can do that immediately. Like, just don't wake her at night and she'll wake you when she's ready for a feed. That's the way to do it. And if she stretches, some little ones stretch, like at 9 weeks old, my middle child was sleeping through the night. So some little ones can stretch very, very long, even though they are, even though they're breastfed and not on solids. So let your little one lead the way for night times. Question from Annika. She says, what would you say are the best toys for development and stimulation for babies aged between 6 and 12 months? Okay, it's all the B's. So the B's are the toys for 6 to 12 months. Blocks that they can bang together. When we use blocks and bang them together, we're using the bilateral coordination of the body. Balls to learn to push. And as you push a ball towards your little one, they'll watch it coming towards them, which is good for their eye motor control and also for their hands. Also, if it's a big ball, putting their hands together like that is also bilateral motor coordination. Okay, blocks, books, bubbles. Blocks, balls, books. Okay, another B. So they are very, very important books because they increase language. So read to your baby. For those of you who are not reading to your baby, from 4 months old, start reading to your baby. Get them used to books. Bubbles are absolutely wonderful because bubbles are, they can watch them. It's great for eye-hand coordination. They're very interesting. So bubbles are fabulous. And then boxes. The 5th B is a box. And boxes I love for any age. So at 6 to 12 month olds, pop your baby in a box and drag them around with to get their vestibular system activated. You can again find these inside the app. And then also they just love to start to crawl through that. So 6 to 12 months, they will be crawling hopefully by 10 months, and they can actually crawl through boxes in and out. They learn about spatial reasoning because they get into a box, they try and stand up and it hits the top of their head, and they learn about spatial reasoning. So there are lots of wonderful reasons why we should use boxes. Elizabeth, do I swaddle in the day for naps too? Which sleep sack do you recommend? Our baby's 11 weeks old and breaking free. Yeah, so at 11 weeks old, they might start to break free from the swaddles. Try and swaddle tightly. I do like swaddling all the way through to 14 or 15 weeks until they're rolling. So you can keep trying to swaddle, but if your little one is unraveling themselves, then you can move on to a sleep sack. In terms of sleep sacks that I recommend, there's so many lovely ones. I definitely say nothing with padding inside. The ones that are just a kind of 2 layers of blanket are fabulous. The Baby Sense ones are really nice. They're made with a cotton interlock, so those ones are nice. I think Grow Baby's got some. I think Cotton On had some beautiful ones. So yeah, any of the 100% cotton baby sleeping bags are great. All right, a 13-month-old has never had a dummy or a bottle. She wakes us up plenty of times during the night from one sleep cycle to the next to feed from me. I don't know how to stop this. Oh my goodness, I do feel your pain. She's using you as the dummy. So first of all, you need to put in place a doo-doo blankie. So instead of her coming onto the boobie every time she needs it, you're going to need to give her the doo-doo blankie. Second thing is start with the day. So 13 months old, she only needs 2 feeds. So she has one at breakfast and one when she goes to bed at night. And anything when she demands in between for comfort reasons, you just don't offer, and you do the same at night. And you can pretty much go cold turkey. Offer her water if she's been crying a bit, offer her comfort, rocking, and maybe have daddy do it for a couple of nights so that your boobs aren't anywhere near her. All right, Noxo, hi. How much is too much lactose? My little one is 11 months old and loves yogurt and cheese. So there's no problem with that. If your baby can deal with lactose, which most babies can, then there's no problem with offering her lots and lots of yogurt and cheese. Those are fabulous. And then just make sure that you're giving her lots of lovely, nice green veggies as well for the fiber. But yeah, nothing wrong with yogurt and cheese. Eggs the same. A lot of people always ask me about eggs. How many eggs is too many eggs? You can give your baby as many eggs and yogurt and cheese as you want. Lovely proteins in there. Bianca. Hi Meg, what are your views on thumb sucking? I have a 15-month-old daughter who's a thumb sucker. We're worried about her teeth. Her thumb opens from the sucking. She's never wanted a dummy. So I'm a fan of sucking, full stop. So sometimes that's dummy for some babies and sometimes it's thumb for other babies. And it really doesn't, it's not a major thing, if your baby is on a thumb. There's a couple of caveats to that. If your baby is sucking their fingers like this, that will cause teeth issues. And if your baby sucks their fingers like this, that will cause teeth issues. But if your baby is actually sucking their thumb and there isn't a history of buck teeth in your family, they probably will actually be fine. So I'm not terribly worried about thumb sucking. And they'll usually will outgrow it. You can start to put something bitter like aloe on it from the time they're about this age, from 15 months if you want them to stop. But then you need to replace the comfort with something else like a doo-doo blankie. All right, so Sonika, how many milk feeds would a 6-month-old need? So that's usually 4 in the day and then 1 potentially at night. So your 4 in the day would be, let's just give an example, 6, 10, 2, 6. So 1 on waking, 1 mid-morning, 1 mid-afternoon, and then 1 in the evening. And then your nighttime one will usually be kind of 1 at about kind of 2, 3 in the morning, hopefully pushing out to 4 by the time they're a little older than 6 months. And then you're back to the morning feeds. And very often that one kind of at 4 a.m. is split with the one at 6 a.m. So, you kind of give them a little bit and then a little bit more later. Right. Okay, so while we're waiting for other questions to come through, you're welcome to ask a few more questions. We have got a few more minutes left. I'm just going to talk a little bit about school, because a lot of people ask me questions around where should my little one be going to play groups? What are the principles for choosing play groups? So the principles for choosing play groups are that little ones do need a bit of extra stimulation and socialization from about 18 months onwards. So if your little one has been at home with you exclusively till 18 months, that is amazing, or with the nanny. But they do start to need some stimulation and some interaction at about 18 months. And then from there, you want to choose a group that is really, really small. So in other words, just a few number of children. I think a ratio of 6 children to 1 teacher is the optimal. And then you want a curriculum that's very much focused on play. You don't want to have the focus on like academics, language, maths, and so on at a very little age. They just must be playing. What the fabulous thing about play is that the byproduct of play is things like language, maths, and so on. So obviously the one that I really do recommend is PlaySense. If you haven't heard about PlaySense, go and have a look it up. It's playsense.org online. And we've got 50 schools throughout South Africa. Well, we've got less than that at the moment, but we've got capacity for 50 schools across South Africa. And you will be able to enroll your little one at a school near you, or even host one in your home where a teacher comes into your home to help you with your little one and to take them through the curriculum. All right, Tamsin, my 3-month-old keeps on chewing her fingers. Could the gums be itching for the start of the teething process? Is there anything I'll put on her gums? What a great question. So the answer to your question is 99% that she is not actually teething, that she is just exploring her hands. So what happens is that at about 9 weeks of age, up until then, little ones have got reflexes that move them when they're crying. It moves them away from midline, so their hands will be going out like this. But from 9 weeks old, those reflexes integrate. And so by 12 weeks, they're able to get their hands to their mouth, which brings them a huge amount of pleasure because there are more pleasure receptors and touch receptors in their mouth than anywhere else on their body. So they get their hands to their mouth just simply because they like it. Number one. Number two, because they're exploring it. Because of all those touch receptors, they learn about the quality of their hands or of objects. And so they tend to mouth things. And the third thing is that it's a self-soothing strategy. It helps them to calm themselves. So I definitely do not believe in disrupting that. I think that is absolutely awesome if your little one has discovered their hands. So don't think it's teething. Don't try and take their hands away from them. Allow them to chew on their hands. And that's another reason why I don't like mittens. Like, don't cover your baby's hands. Let your baby's hands be out there. Don't use those baby grows that kind of flop over the top and can kind of take away all of the pleasure for them to actually be, that they would derive from their hands. So a little bit of more news from our side. This week's episode of Sense by Meg Faure is all about starting solids at 20 weeks old, what to expect. And we're going to be talking to Christina. So if you haven't listened to my podcast, Sense by Meg Faure, go and listen to it. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And this week we're talking to Christina, and she's got a 20-week-old baby, Connor. And we're going to talk about building immunity and also talking about moving from breastfeeding to formula and then solids as well. So there's lots of lovely, lovely things in the podcast. It was just released yesterday. Go and have a look at it. And then very excitingly, for those of you who are pregnant or for those of you who know somebody who's pregnant, next Saturday we have got our Preparing for Parenthood event, and that is just going to be absolutely amazing. Go and have a look. The link is in the bio of the Meg Faure page. We're going to be looking at everything you need to know from pregnancy through until about 6-7 weeks of your baby's life. So everything from feeding, colic, preparing your relationship for parenthood. Please do go and have a look at that, the Preparing for Parenthood event. It's next Saturday and it's completely free of charge, and it's got an amazing amount of free prizes as well, All right, so another question from Noxor. She says, my 11-month-old baby loves solids, started porridge at 6 months once a day. How long do we keep porridge in the diet? I like that it's fortified. Yeah, it's interesting. Porridge is fortified, but there are other ways to get iron. And so, for instance, in our dark green leafy vegetables, by 11 months old, I would only be having porridge as a morning meal. So that would be just for breakfast. And all the other meals need to focus on vegetables and proteins as well. Then my 10-month-old is not interested in the breast anymore. Sometimes only drinks once a day, usually in the middle of the night when he's half asleep. Eats like a champ. Should I be worried? No. So 10 months old, we're really only expecting them to be having 3 milk feeds in a day anyway. Solids are the priority, particularly if he's a social butterfly. And moms, if you haven't done my sensory personality course, do go and have a look inside the Parent Sense app. It is there. And that would explain to you why social butterflies actually do go off their milk. So there's a good potential that he's just going off milk, which is absolutely fine. He only really needs 3 milk feeds, and other than that, it's absolutely fine. You can get the dairy into his diet through other ways, like milkshakes and yogurt and that type of thing. When I say milkshakes, I mean smoothies that you can make at home. And remember, you don't have to use dairy. You can use other milks as well. All right, Michelle, my 11-week-old is still feeding drinking every 2 to 2.5 hours. I'm breastfeeding, confident my milk is of good quality as he's gaining weight really well and does a stretch of about 6 hours. And I presume that is at night. So, so I think you can start to stretch him to 2.5 to 3 hours. And it just is a process of just stretching him out a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. Kirsty says, your podcast is amazing. It's such a great resource. Thank you. Such a pleasure. Michelle said, should I be worried about the 2-hour feeding during the day? I think just start to move it out. Very often, if he's sleeping 6.5 hours at night, then that's fine. Because usually if they're very close feeds in the day, it might transfer that to nighttime as well. But you can just start to shift it out to about 3 hours now if he's gaining weight nicely, which you say is. Darlene, my little girl is 5 months old, a settled baby. So you've obviously done our sensory course, which is great. She does have severe reflux. I did try to introduce solids a few weeks ago, but everything just comes back up. And then do I start again? You need to. 5 months old, you definitely do need to. But if everything is coming up, you might just want to just check that out with your pediatrician or your clinic sister. But in theory, 5 months old, you do want them to be starting on solids, and particularly if they are reflux babies. And then Sarah, our last question for the day. How do we get our 12-week-old to nap in her own cot during the day? She's perfect at night, but hates being in there during the day. So, I think just having a little bit of white noise on in the room, having a little cot rocker might help. So keeping the room dark. So try and kind of redo the whole room as you have it at night for during those day sleeps as well. And as you are alluding to, Sarah, that consistency is really, really good in terms of sleep. Right, so we have had an incredible day today. Lots and lots of questions. Quickly, a last one. Kimishka, she said, my Ian is, I'm probably not saying his name right. Ayan, maybe, beautiful name. 14 months, social butterfly, dropped to 1 nap. Is that fine? Yes, 12 to 14 months, all babies drop down to, well, most babies should be dropping down to 1 day sleep, which is absolutely perfect. So thank you all very much. Lovely to connect with you today. Do not miss the Preparing for Parenthood event. And if you have preggy friends, let them know about it. And go and download the Parent Sense app. It really is an all-in-one solution for you to be able to parent your baby. And we will see you here next week, same time. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.